I understood at a very early age how images and actually sound move me. I was fascinated by how, specifically with sound and music at first, how that created images in my imagination, yeah, and how that image moved me, coupled with the sound that I was hearing. And so the relationship between the sound and the image that it produced, or the image and the sound that I imagined that would produce later on, became an obsession for me. It became almost like a necessity for me to understand and to work with somehow, to find a way to work with it. And as a child, I was always a very physical, meaning I was very physically active. I was constantly, yeah, I was just playing all the time outside, games and so on. So for me, there was no difference between my imagination and how I embodied it, how I worked with it. It just seemed very natural. And so that easily translated into theater and dance, because suddenly, wow, okay, now I can, after learning some of the more technical aspects of the body and specific ways of moving and exploring and improvising, composing, and so on, I understood, okay, there's a wider range of possibility for how I can work with this powerful, let's say, like organic material of imagery, sound, and body. And it always connected to my intuition as well. So it was something that I could access whenever I wanted. And I'd use that in creative processes of developing performances, in context of teaching, workshops, and later on, of course, now in my daily life. I work with what I have inside. It's not a mental conceptual point, standpoint that I work with. It's more the actual physical, emotional, imaginal material that I want to work with. The more I'm in the body and working with the body as a creative vehicle, coupled with, as I said, the sound and the image, the easier my life seems to be. So it just seemed natural to develop that and hone it and become a bit more, let's say, master of that. Right. Well, first we have to understand that the body is a living, breathing consciousness. Everything in the body is conscious. Every cell, tissue, molecule, organ is in the process of being in conscious dialogue with our inner and outer experience. So the same is happening between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And the fact is that this subconscious realm or field is active all the time. Not, when I speak about subconscious mind, it's not just a part of the brain. It's the entire body. Say, you take the image of the ocean. We look at it in a sense like it's the ocean. The subconscious is the depths of the ocean, and the conscious mind is the surface. And on the surface, there can be a lot of movement. There can be a lot of waves, a lot of visible movement that we can see, but below we don't really see. So we have to dive down in order to see and feel the different currents that are moving in us behind the surface, like say behind the curtain, no, behind the visible conscious realm of our experience, right? We say in this work, we say that dreams and our subconscious imagery are the language of our experiencing body. Because the body is always conscious, or it is consciousness in movement. So it cannot help but be a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, lived experience. It's a question of whether or not we are aware of that. This is the real question. Are we aware of this? And if we are, if we become more aware of it, what are the possibilities of working with it? That is, the dreams are as complicated or as simple as the dreamer. And so that being said, whatever someone dreams, they experience. And experience isn't something that happens in the mind. It's something that we live through feeling, emotion. We move when we are dreaming. So, we're unaware of the fact that our bodies are moving, but they are moving. They are expressing through movement while we're asleep, whether it's very little movements or big movements. It has an effect and an impact. Those images have an effect and impact on our body. It's not simply a psychological or mental field that we are concerned with respect to dreaming. We're concerned with the entire field, the physical, the mental, the emotional, etheric. So it's really a lived experience. Some people have more, let's say, maybe more tendencies to be more mental in their daily life, or more emotional. They have more emotional approach to life, or a more physical approach to life, or more spiritual approach to life, so that is something which is somehow moving them in their daily life. So that will inform their dreaming. We cannot help but experience it on a physical level. The question is, do we have the capacity or desire to use those impulses that we receive from the dreaming in our daily life? So it's basically a work of bridging the gap between our daily experience and our nightly experience when we're asleep, so that there is no difference really between I am awake in the day and I'm also awake in my dream, meaning that I am aware that I'm dreaming and that I am working with those images to a certain degree, as needed, right? So what I find really interesting is that the practice that I'm engaged in reinforces that dialogue between the conscious and the subconscious. And by doing so, we see how it affects our daily life as much as it affects our nighttime dreaming, and how our nighttime dreaming affects our daily life. So it's a living kind of loop between how I access my dreaming, how I work with my nighttime dreaming, how more awake I am in my dreaming, the more awake I am in my daily life, and vice versa. So there's a symbiotic relationship there. So as I said before, it's a work of transformation, of waking up. No, like you just mentioned shadow work, right?
Yeah.
Um, which for many of us, it kind of it suggests that there are things which are hidden within us, things that are still working in the background, still informing our daily life and choices and experiences, but it's still in the background. We're not aware of it, and yet it still uh, informs our reality. It still creates the outcomes that we may or may not want to have in our daily life. So how do I work with that? How do I deal with that? Like I said before, begin establishing an ongoing dialogue between your conscious and subconscious, your nighttime dreaming and your daytime, so that little by little you begin to see what is buried in those shadowy aspects, those hidden aspects of ourselves. And then once we have access to it, we can work with it and transform it into something that is now integrating that into our entire body, because it's essentially fragmented parts of ourselves, buried parts of ourselves that, as I said, continue to work through in our daily life in the form of habitual patterns, belief patterns. I'm not good enough, or I'm not loved enough, or I'm not worthy. All these inner systems that we hold to that may or may not serve us in our daily life, but they operate. But the ones that don't serve us, we see because we look inside. We have to turn a light inside. So basically, looking inward is a way of shining a light into that shadow.
How do you know when the person is in the right track? How do we know, we are doing a good work in the dream integration aspect, in the
I think you know, it's a knowing, a bodily knowing that is there. It's not, I understand, okay, I should be here or I should be there in my thinking or whatever. But uh, it's an experience, an emotional, physical experience
Yeah.
that you have, and by being aware of that, and then constantly returning to that state or finding ways to return to that state, um, it becomes natural, it becomes a habit, it becomes easy, right? If you understand, okay, this feels good, this works, you understand that from a physical perspective, not from an intellectual level. You understand it by your experience of it. You go into the forest or you go to the seaside and you see the nature, and you don't think about, hmm, this is really good for me to be here. You just feel good there. Basically, we work solely on the practice of dream opening, right? Which focuses on night dreams and the process of opening them step by step by step. And as I said before, um, dreams are the language of the subconscious. And as such, they carry specific questions, concerns, longings, daily residue, and other qualities that aren't easily understood by the conscious mind at first glance. When we wake up, we don't really understand, why did I dream about a chicken having lunch with a chicken on the top of the Empire State Building or something? I don't know. So therefore, if we want to open the doors and understand these images first, and even more importantly, experience the transformative potential of the images, then we need to establish a dialogue with them. this dialogue is the essential part of this practice. And it's a practice that was established by Catherine Schoenberg, my teacher, that's the head of the School of Images based in New York.
But it's a collective practice, right?
It's an individual and collective practice.
Okay.
There is no differentiation, really. We are all part of the dream field. So dream field could be, it's a term that we use, but it could be translatable into the unified field in physics, collective unconscious that Jung used, and so on and so on. We know that, of course, dream interpretation is a practice that's been utilized and incorporated into many different cultures around the world. And so every culture or most cultures have their own practice and protocol for working with their dreaming and specific uses for those dreams and how they use them in their communal and individual life. So, yeah, like I said, they have their own methods and protocols for unlocking the hidden treasures of their own dreams. In this case, each culture also has a specific way of relating to dreams, their uses, and the potential for personal and communal transformation. Within the practice of dream opening, though, there is the language of the dreamer, the one who is dreaming, that we focus upon. So we focus upon that dreamer's language, regardless of whatever cultural, spiritual, or sociological context they live in. All of it is included in their own language specifically. Of course, we take into account, what informs them. And by that, I mean, what forms do they take into themselves from the time they're born until the time we meet them and have them in front of us. Yeah. They are a collection. We are a collection of different forms, basically. So we look at that and we try to step by step open the dream, first by reading the dream. So the dream has to be written out. It has to be clear, let's say, in the form that it's written. It has to be, so it's basically the story that we are receiving on the first level. No matter in what way it's being told, the language of the dreams is very different, but we try to write the dream as we experience it in the first person. So it means writing it as if it is happening in the moment. Mm-hmm. Second, we look at the patterns that are becoming more and more evident within the dream. Different patterns can be movements that are happening in the dream, moving from one place to another, or from up and down, or in and out, or from one country to another country to another country, or it depends on the dream, but there are different kinds of patterns that show up in the dream. Can be emotions, can be numbers, can be people, can be movements, can be any number of things, which is essentially a reflection of our daily life as well, because we look around and we see that there are different patterns that we repeat in our daily life. And this is our ongoing dream that we are living. So second level is patterns. Third level is the actual opening of the dream, where we discover what is the question that the dream is really asking. What is the question that the dream is really asking me to look at? How do I, for example, how do I obtain more of an ability to be fully engaged and alive in my practice, right? One aspect, so the dream asks different questions depending on the dreamer, and we are working together in order to understand and reveal what that question is. And then if there are any aspects in the dream that need to be repaired or corrected, then we do that with the dreamer immediately through an imagery practice of correcting that image, which in this practice is called a tikkun. And once that has been repaired and the dream has been resolved, then we close the dream and we basically give the dreamer then a chance to see, okay, what is the actual secret that is needed here for me to carry this into my daily life? What is that part of the dream that helps me understand that and live it? Do you have a burning question to ask? And this connects us immediately with desire. It connects us immediately with our instinct, with our intuition, with our body, because it's something that moves us. It's really a practice that constantly asks you to return to your feeling, to your sensation. I will constantly be asking you, okay, what does that image feel like? How does it work in your body? We need the body in order to move. From where do we choose to move? Within ourselves. And how aware and awake can we do that in our daily life?
That's crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially now. I mean, it's always crucial, but it's definitely becoming more and more and more important. We can't just leave the burner on the stove on and forget about it somehow. You know, things are still cooking, and if we aren't attending to that, then it's going to burn.
Yeah.
So, I always say, put your echar tu carne en el asador, no? Put your meat on the barbecue. Let's make something. You're not we come together to a space in which to work. So it means bring yourself, bring your experience, bring your questions, bring your desires, bring your issues that you want to address in this workshop.